Did you hear the kitties? Well, we have such a great topic tonight. We're talking about extinction. Good
Yes,
evening,
we
Jen.
are.
We're talking about
All
a
night
lot of
long.
things. Yeah, a lot of things.
Mhm.
Well, I'm just going to say everybody's joining us. It looks great. We have a good show. We have good articles. Jen always does her, what is it, the 24,000 foot look over. And we are
Yeah.
in our holiday garb. You know, we're in our little holiday stuff. Yeah, Jen Psychedelic Cat and Anthony Davis, Kim Armad, and Vegematics with us, and Darlene and James McKenna and Jean. Hi, Jean and Rich Diana and I'm trying to do it quick. Raza, Kay Ryan and Bill G.
The
Oh, this is
gang's
great.
all
Phil Stone, the
here.
gang's all here. Veg has a new video. Don't forget, after you watch us, go over and watch Vegematic. He has 2 new videos, actually. The Vegematic channel, please, and subscribe. And hi, Max and Old Sage Joe. This is great. So, Jen, I'm going to give it to you and Gary Ballard. Hi. Okay. Now I'm going to give it to you to do
Okay.
the 20,000 foot overview from above.
Okay. Thank you so much,
You're
Sandy. And guys,
welcome.
so good to be here. We've got a terrific show for you
Wait,
tonight. It's all about extinction.
Well,
And we are starting off with an absolutely fabulous piece from Common Dreams that a lot of people have been sharing around.
mm-hmm.
It's an opinion piece, and it's catastrophic global disorder beckons unless we act swiftly. Right?
All right.
It is a lengthy article, but very, very interesting. It seems like everybody is talking about climate these days. But yet, this has happened before. We're going to cover a topic that came out in livescience.com. Epic sea level rise drove Vikings out of Greenland. So take a look to the past and see what happened in the past. And then we're going to go over to the Kansas City Star article that just came out. Are December dust storms, heat waves, the new KC normal, Kansas City? Climate change
Kansas
denial
City.
is over. So there is a crisis of awakening, I would say. You know, not for any of us, but certainly
No.
for a lot of people
Well, I wish there were a
around
few.
it's kind of satisfying in a certain way to watch the world wake up, and it's also kind of, it's a bitch to be right, but
Yeah.
we have been saying exactly this
For how
for
long?
so many years. And then we're going to go over to phys.org. Article just came out. Study climate only models likely underestimate species extinction. All right. And then we're going to jump over to an article that came out in AP News. U.S. says ivory-billed woodpecker, 22 other species extinct.
Oh, we don't like that. No.
I know.
No.
Don't like it. Bad. Then we're going to jump over to an article from Center for Biological Diversity. Biden administration drops ball on federal protection for more than 60 species facing extinction.
Wow.
Not nice.
My favorite word.
And wow.
Wow.
And if we have time, we're going over and covering an article from NOAA, NOAA.gov. It's a report. Climate change contributed to some of 2020's worst weather. And Sandy, that will do it. That's a show.
That's a show. So
That's a show.
How do you want to start out? Do you want to tag team the first article, or do you want to read it and I sit and just chill?
It's entirely up to you. It's really entirely up to you, however you'd like to do it.
Okay. Well, let's see here.
Do
I
you want
am
me
going
to
to
read it?
Yes, start reading it.
All right.
This is the article, and then I'm going to play a little bit
Oh, okay.
while she reads it, I'm going to set us up for the rest of the show.
Oh, okay. That's
Yeah.
very good. Well,
Okay,
this is a
start
nice
reading it.
long article, guys. So get your popcorn, get your beer, sit back and relax to listen to tales of terror and woe. So, this is an article that just came out in Common Dreams. Catastrophic global disorder beckons unless we act swiftly on climate. Without climate change, the current world order will almost certainly collapse into catastrophic global disorder with dire consequences for all of us. Written by a guy named Alfred McCoy.
Mhm.
When midnight strikes on New Year's Day of 2050, there will be little cause for celebration. There will, of course, be the usual toast with fine wines in the climate controlled compounds of the wealthy few.
Oops.
But for most of humanity, it'll just be another day of adversity bordering on misery, a desperate struggle to find food, water, shelter, and safety. In the
Mm.
previous decades, storm surges will have swept away coastal barriers erected at enormous cost, and rising seas will have flooded the downtowns of major cities that once housed more than 100 million people. Restless waves will pound shorelines around the world, putting villages, towns, and cities at risk. As several hundred million climate change refugees in Africa, Latin America, and South Asia fill leaky boats or trudge overland in a desperate search for food and shelter, affluent nations worldwide will be trying to shut their borders even tighter, pushing the crowds back with tear gas and gunfire. Yet, those reluctant host countries, including the United States, won't faintly be immune from the pain. Every summer, in fact, ever more powerful hurricanes, propelled by climate change, will pummel the east and Gulf coasts of this country,
Mm.
possibly even forcing the federal government to abandon Miami and New Orleans to the rising tides.
Mm.
Meanwhile, wildfires, already growing in size in 2021, will devastate vast stretches of the West, destroying thousands upon thousands of homes every summer and fall in an ever expanding fire season.
Mm.
Keep in mind that I can write all this now because such future widespread suffering won't be caused by some unforeseen disaster to come, but by an all too obvious, painfully predictable imbalance in the basic elements that sustain human life:
Mm.
air, earth, fire, and water.
Sounds like a band.
As exactly, right? Great one for 2022.
Yeah.
As average world temperatures rise by as much as 2.3 degrees Celsius, which is 4.2 degrees Fahrenheit, by mid century, climate change will degrade the quality of life in every country on Earth.
Mm.
Climate change in the 21st century, this dismal vision of life circa 2050, comes not from some flight of literary fantasy, but from the published environmental science. Indeed, we can all see the troubling signs of global warming around us right now: worsening wildfires, ever more severe ocean storms, increased coastal flooding. While the world is focused on the fiery spectacle of wildfires destroying swaths of Australia, Brazil, California, and Canada, a far more serious threat is developing, not only attended to in the planet's remote Not only are ice caps melting with frightening speed, already raising sea levels worldwide, Arctic permafrost is fast receding, releasing enormous stores of lethal greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. At that frozen frontier far beyond our ken or consciousness, ecological changes, brewing largely invisibly deep beneath the Arctic tundra, will accelerate global warming in ways sure to inflict untold future misery on all of us.
How
More than
festive.
any other. Oh,
Yeah.
right in time for the season.
Yes, we pick such festive articles.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Yeah.
More than any other place or problem, the thawing of the Arctic's frozen earth, which covers vast parts of the roof of the world, will shape humanity's fate for the rest of this century, destroying cities, devastating nations, rupturing the current global order. If, as I've suggested in my new book, To Govern the Globe, World Orders and Catastrophic Change, Washington's world system is likely to fade by 2030, thanks to a mix of domestic decline and international rivalry. Beijing's hyper-nationalist hegemony will, at best, have just completed a couple of decades of dominance before
Okay.
it too suffers the calamitous consequences of unchecked global warming. By 2050, as the seas submerge some of its major cities and the heat begins to ravage its agricultural heartland, China will have no choice but to abandon whatever sort of global system it might have constructed. And so, as we peer dimly into the potentially catastrophic decades beyond 2050, the international community will have good reason to forge a new kind of world order, unlike any that has come before. The impact of global warming at mid-century. In assessing the likely course of climate change by 2050, one question is paramount. How quickly will we feel its impact?
I think we are.
Yeah, we're feeling it.
I think we
For
are.
decades, scientists thought that climate change would arrive at what science writer Eugene Linden called a stately pace. In 1975, the US National Academies of Sciences still felt that it would take centuries for the climate to change in any meaningful way. As late as 1990, the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, concluded that the Arctic permafrost, which stores both staggering amounts of carbon dioxide and methane, and even more dangerous greenhouse gas, was not yet melting. And the Antarctic ice sheets remained stable. In 1993, however, scientists began studying ice cores extracted from Greenland's ice cap and found that there had been 25 rapid
Wow.
climate
25.
change events in the last glacial period thousands of years ago, showing that the climate could change massively within a decade or two. Driven
Yes.
by a growing scientific consensus about the dangers facing humanity, representatives of 196 states met in 2015 in Paris, where they agreed to commit themselves to a 45-degree percent reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030
Oh,
and achieve net carbon neutrality by 2050.
okay.
Yay, team, right?
Yay,
Yay,
team.
team. Yay, team. To
Oh.
limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre industrial levels. This, they argued, would be sufficient to avoid the disastrous impacts sure to come at 2 degrees or higher. However, with the bright hopes of that Paris conference faded quickly, within 3 years, the scientific community realized that the cascading effects of global warming reaching 1.5 degrees C above pre industrial levels would be evident not in the distant future of 2100, but perhaps by 2040, impacting most adults alive today. The medium term effects of climate change will only be amplified by the uneven way the planet is warming, and with a far heavier impact on the Arctic.
Mm.
According to a Washington Post analysis, by 2018, the world already had hotspots that recorded an average rise of 2 degrees C above pre industrial norm. As the sun strikes tropical latitudes, huge columns of warm air rise and then are pushed towards the poles by greenhouse gases trapped in the atmosphere until they drop down to Earth at higher latitudes, creating spots with faster rising temperatures: the Mideast, Western Europe, and above all, the Arctic. In 2018 IPCC Doomsday Report, its scientists warned that even at just 1.5 degrees C, temperature increases would be unevenly distributed globally and could possibly reach a devastating 4.5 degrees C in
Yeah.
the Arctic's high altitudes, with profound consequences for the entire planet.
Nothing we didn't know.
I hate to be right sometimes. Climate change cataclysm. Recent scientific research has found that by 2050, the key drivers of major climate change will be feedback loops at both ends of the temperature spectrum. At the hotter end, in Africa, Australia, and the Amazon, warmer temperatures will spark ever more devastating forest fires, reducing tree cover, releasing vast amounts of carbon into the atmosphere. This, in turn, as is already happening, will fuel yet more fires and
Mm.
so create a monstrous self reinforcing feedback
Feedback
loop.
loop.
Yep. That could decimate the great tropical rainforests
Mhm.
of this planet. Yeah. The even more serious and uncontrollable driver, however, will be the planet's polar regions. There, an Arctic feedback loop is already gaining a self sustaining momentum that could soon move beyond humanity's capacity to control it. By mid century or before, as the ice sheets continue to melt disastrously in Greenland and Antarctica, rising oceans will make extreme sea level events like once in a century storm surges and flooding annual occurrences in many areas. If global warming
Crazy.
grows beyond the maximum 2 degrees C target set by the Paris Agreement, depending on what happens to Antarctica's ice sheets, ocean levels could increase by a staggering 43 inches as the century ends. In fact, a
We
worst
won't be
case
here.
scenario by the National Academies of Sciences project, a sea level rise as much as 20 inches by 2050 and 78 inches by 2100, with a catastrophic loss of 690,000 square miles of land, and
Worst case
expand.
scenario? Worst case scenario. Okay. Mm-hmm.
It's going to be worse, unfortunately,
I
and
don't know.
expands 4 times the size of California, displacing about 2.5% of the world's population and inundating major cities like New York. Adding to such concerns, a recent study in Nature predicted that by 2060, rain rather than snow could dominate parts of the Arctic, further accelerating ice loss and raising sea levels significantly.
Mm.
Moving that doomsday ever closer, recent satellite imagery reveals that the ice shelf holding back Antarctica's massive Thwaites Glacier could shatter within 3 to 5 years, quickly breaking the Florida sized frozen mass into hundreds of icebergs
Lovely.
and eventually resulting in several feet of sea level rise. Okay, that's another oops, I forgot something.
Oops. Oops.
Yeah. Think of it this way: in the Arctic, ice is drama, but permafrost is death. The spectacle of melting polar ice sheets cascading into ocean waters is dramatic indeed. True mass death, however, lies in the murky, mysterious permafrost, that sloppy stew of decayed matter and frozen water from ice ages past covers 730,000 square miles of the northern hemisphere and can reach 2,300 feet below ground. That's over half a mile, and holds enough potentially releasable carbon and methane to melt the poles and inundate densely populated coastal plains worldwide.
Hmm.
In turn, such
I'm
emissions would
exhausted
only
just from you
raise.
reading.
I'm just like, fuck me now.
Oh,
Jesus,
Jesus Christ.
listen to this. In turn, such emissions would only raise Arctic temperatures further, melting more permafrost and ice, and so on,
Year after
year
year.
after year after year. We're talking, in other words, about a potentially devastating feedback loop that could increase greenhouse gases in the atmosphere beyond the planet's capacity to compensate.
Mm.
According to a 2019 report in Nature, the vast zone of frozen Earth that covers about a quarter of the northern hemisphere is sprawling storehouse for about 1.6 trillion metric tons of carbon,
Wow.
twice the amount already in the atmosphere. Just FYI.
Mm-hmm.
Current models assume that permafrost
Oh
thaws
my.
gradually from the surface downward, slowly releasing the methane and carbon dioxide into the atmosphere.
Mm.
But frozen soil also physically holds the landscape together, and so its thawing can rip the surface open erratically, exposing ever larger areas to the sun. Around the Arctic Circle, there is already dramatic physical evidence of rapid change. Amid the vast permafrost that covers nearly two-thirds of Russia, one Siberian town had temperatures that reached a historic 100 degrees Fahrenheit in June 2020, the highest ever recorded above the Arctic Circle period. Meanwhile, several peninsulas on the Arctic Sea have experienced methane eruptions that have produced craters up to 100 feet deep. Since the rapid thawing releases more methane than gradual melting does, and methane has 25 times more heating power than CO2, the impacts of thawing permafrost on Earth's climate suggests that a 2019 report in Nature could be twice that expected from current models.
Mm.
Oops, it
Oops.
accidentally doubled. To add to a dangerous wild card, to add a dangerous wild card to such an already staggering panorama of potential destruction, about 700,000 square miles of Siberia also contain a form of methane-rich permafrost called Yodoma, which forms a layer of ice 30 to 260 feet deep. As rising temperatures melt that icy permafrost, expanding lakes, which now cover 30% of Siberia, will serve as even greater conduits for the release of such methane, which will bubble up from their melting bottoms to escape into the atmosphere. New World Order? Question mark. Given clear failure of the world system to cope with climate change, the international community will, by mid century, need to find new forms of collaboration to contain the damage. After all, the countries at the recent UN climate summit at Glasgow couldn't even agree to phase out coal, the dirtiest of all fossil fuels. Instead, in their final outcome document, they opted for the phrase phase down,
Yeah, they did.
capitulating to China, which has no plans to even start reducing its coal combustion until 2025. And India, which recently postponed its goal of achieving net carbon neutrality until an almost unimaginably distant 2070. Since those two countries account for 37% of all greenhouse gases now being released into the atmosphere, their procrastination courts climate disaster for humanity.
You think?
Yeah, thank.
Yeah, think. Oh, brother.
Oh, brother. Who knows what forms of global governance and cooperation will come into being in the years ahead, but simply to focus on an old one. Here's a possibility: to exercise effective sovereignty over global commons. Perhaps a genuinely reinforced United Nations could reform itself in major ways, including making the Security Council an elective body with no permanent members and ending the great power prerogative of unilateral vetoes.
You mean get rid of power? That word,
No.
power? Yeah, okay. Like that'll happen.
This is like the freaking death of the patriarchy. It's the death rattle of the patriarchy. It's rising up like a zombie. Such a reformed and potentially more powerful organization then agreed to cede sovereignty over to a few narrow yet critical areas of governance to protect the most fundamental of all human rights: survival. Just as the Security Council can, at least theoretically, now punish a nation that crosses international borders with armed force, so a future UN could sanction in potentially meaningful ways a state that contributed to release greenhouse gases into the atmosphere or refused to receive climate change refugees. To save that human tide, estimated at between 200 million and 1.2 billion people by mid-century, some UN High Commissioner would need the authority to enforce the mandatory resettlement of at least some of them. Moreover, the current voluntary transfer of climate reconstruction funds from prosperous temperate zone to the poor tropics would need to become mandatory as well. No one can predict with any certainty whether reforms like these and the power to change national behavior that would come with them will arrive in time to cap emissions and slow climate change, or too late, if at all, to do anything but manage a series of increasingly uncontrollable
Lovely.
feedback loops.
Hmm.
Yet, without such change, the current world order will almost certainly collapse into catastrophic global disorder with dire consequences for all of us.
Well, wasn't that a doom gloom? Common Dreams is really going
God.
super alarmist, huh? I
Yeah,
guess they're
I'm telling you.
depressed over the fact that COP26 was such a shit show. Well, it wasn't all a shit show. I mean, I have to say I did enjoy some things, and I won't say I didn't, because I did, you know.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to move along because we have a pretty lofty goal here. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna go over this, which is just driving the Vikings. Now we're gonna go a little bit more now that we started you with the most depressing article on the planet. We're gonna go over to the Vikings. And not even the mighty Vikings could stand against climate change. Here we go. The Vikings are remembered as fierce fighters, but even these mighty warriors, they were no match for climate change. Scientists recently found that ice sheet growth and sea level rise led to massive coastal flooding that inundated Norse farms, the farms, and ultimately drove the Vikings out of Greenland. Okay, we're done. They left. But they actually first established a foothold in southern Greenland around AD 985 with the arrival of Eric Thorvaldsson, also known as Eric the Red, a Norwegian-born explorer who sailed to Greenland after being exiled from Iceland. Now, other Viking settlers soon followed, forming communities in the eastern settlement and then the western settlement, and they thrived for centuries. At the time of the Vikings' arrival, Greenland was already inhabited by the people of the Dorset culture, an indigenous group that preceded the arrival of the Inuit people in the Arctic, which is according to the University of California at Riverside. They must have a research project. Around the 15th century, signs of North habitation in the region had vanished from the archaeological record. Researchers previously suggested that factors such as climate change and economic shifts likely led to the Vikings abandoning Greenland. So now new findings show that rising seas played a very key role by submerging miles of coastline, according to the data presented Wednesday, December 15th at the annual conference of the American Geophysical Union, the AGU, held in New Orleans and online. So between the 14th and 19th centuries, now put your imagination caps on, guys, Europe and North America experienced a period of significantly cooler temperatures known as the Little Ice Age. Under those chilly conditions, the Greenland ice sheet, that vast blanket of ice covering most of Greenland, would have become even bigger. Marissa Julia Borgnine, a doctoral candidate in the Department of Earth and Planetary Sciences at Harvard, said in a presentation at that same aforementioned conference. As the ice sheet advanced, its increasing heaviness weighed down the substrate underneath, making coastal areas more prone to flooding. At the same time, the increased gravitational attraction between the expanding ice sheet and the large masses of sea ice pushed more seawater over Greenland's coast. These two processes could have driven widespread flooding along the coastline exactly where they were settled. The scientists tested their hypothesis by modeling estimated ice growth in southwestern Greenland over that 400-year period of Norse occupation and adding those calculations to a model showing sea level rise during that time. Then they analyzed maps of known Viking sites to see how their findings lined up with archaeological evidence marking the end of the Viking the presence in Greenland. Don't tell Torstein. He's a Viking. Their model showed that from 1,000 to 1,400 rising seas around Greenland, get rid of that, had flooded Viking settlements as much as 16 feet, 5 meters.
Wow.
Wow. Affecting about 54 square miles, 140 square kilometers of coastal land. Borgnine, she said. This flooding would have submerged land that the Vikings used for farming and as grazing pasture for their cattle, according to the models. Wow. I just see that in my mind's eye happening. However, sea level rise was probably not the only reason why the Vikings left. Other types of challenges could cause even long-standing communities to collapse, and a perfect storm of external pressures, such as climate change, social unrest, resource depletion, that may have spurred the Vikings to abandon their settlements for good. A combination of climate and environmental change, the shifting resource landscape, the flux of supply and demand of exclusive products for the foreign market, and interactions with the Inuit in the north all could have contributed to this out-migration, she said. Likely a combination of these factors led the Norse migration out of Greenland and further west. That was pretty cute little piece of history there.
Yeah. It's
I
very
liked
interesting. And it's interesting, Sandy. It was over a 400-year period between the 14th and 19th centuries that this sea level rise happened, and it was for a bigger amount than I expected. How far did it
Oh,
get
you want me to go back?
risen during? I'm trying to
Let's.
remember.
Where was it? Uh, Rising
Anyway,
seas. 16 feet.
it kind
That's
of
what this article said.
16 feet
Yeah.
over. I mean,
Yeah.
that's freaking
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Over a 400-year period,
Yeah.
approximately 16 feet.
Woo.
Hey, this is like no kidding,
No
right?
kidding. No.
You know, if you
And
wanna find Viking architects or, settlements, go ahead and look under the ocean 16 feet down off the coast. Maybe you'll find a little bit more. I bet there's a ton of stuff under there.
I wonder how much research has been done on that area. See, now the doors are opening for more and more and more creativity here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the reason why we moved over here is because what we read to you about from Common Dreams, and then, just talking about what happened with the sea level rise. Well, we're coming to now, and then we're going to go back a little way, but this is an opinion piece from Kansas City, and I'm going to quickly do this one, and then we have a video to watch. So our December dust storms, heat waves, the new KC normal, climate change denial is over. Okay.
Over.
Over.
It's over.
It's over. It's over. Spring-like temperatures and howling winds aren't very December-like, are they? Oh, do I have any howling winds to play? I was looking for my howling winds. Well, guess what? I don't. I only have thunder, which I could play that. Okay.
That's good.
So let's not complain too loudly. Generally, a late fall heat wave is easier to deal with than ice storms and blizzards. Much of Kansas spent Wednesday night dodging the grit and sand kicked up by the Dust Bowl-like conditions. High winds accelerated grass fires. Did you smell the smoke? And toppled trees. Rare tornadoes stayed to the north, but homes and businesses in our community, they were damaged by that spring-like weather. Some Kansas Cityans, a precious few, they got a couple of drops of rain. But no single weather event confirms climate change. But high temperatures and windstorms provide further confirmation that something important is happening to the planet, and we must be better prepared for this. The last 7 years will be the warmest on record, meteorologists say. The ice in Antarctica is melting, driven by warming seas at the South Pole. It reached 124 degrees in Portland, Oregon in 2021, which is absolute insanity. Afghanistan faces a crippling drought. These aren't alarmist observations or guesses. They're facts, no matter what a smattering of climate change skeptical former TV weatherman tells you. The temperature gauge does not Lie. So does that mean Kansas City can or should ignore snowstorms and cold snaps? Of course not. Even small snow events can snarl traffic and frustrate residents, and it must be addressed. For now, winter remains a real thing. In fact, winter storms may be worse than normal. Sand and salt plows, they're not going away. It does mean the region must redouble its efforts to understand and address climate change, warming. That means promoting and supporting mass transit. It means building more walkable neighborhoods and planting lots of trees for shade. It means understanding and appreciating the link between hot weather and violence. Heat islands are a real phenomenon. And Kansas City will need more cooling shelters and a beefed up health department to respond to the weather. So we've said that the region is doing a relatively good job of accepting climate change and doing more to address it. Sadly, that work must continue at double or triple the current speed. A warming planet is a clear and present danger to all of us. The warning was embedded in every dust storm Wednesday, or burning field, or broken tree, or damaged roof. Mitigating the effects of climate change remained a priority, but responding to the reality of extreme weather is at the top of the agenda now as well. More must be done. Climate change is here. So that is the newspaper for the every guy, the regular people. And so that's what people are finally doing, things like that. And I am going to we're going to play a video, but people are finally, they're waking up if it's in their local newspaper, right, Jennifer? I mean, that's more than I didn't used to see that.
Huge shift. I seriously feel a huge shift in consciousness. I think this spate collection of tornadoes that hit us last week that ripped through 6 states, it was so freaking horrifying that I think it's shaken a lot of people to their core. Nothing like this has ever happened. And now it's happening. Pick your week, name your disaster.
Yeah, and it's making a lot of people
I think
not be
a
able to
lot
sleep.
of people are getting on board with the abrupt climate change and why it's happening,
Yeah.
I really do.
It's something in my dreams, especially with the tornadoes, because tornadoes terrify me, and everybody knows they terrify me.
Oh,
Well,
they're horrible.
everybody's busy in there, and we're going to segue back to extinction. We have an article, but I have a little film I found, and it's in the show notes, but I thought it was cute, and I thought let's take a break, and we're going to watch this little film. God, here we go.
Unfortunately, today there are many species in danger of extinction. Some of them are already condemned to disappear in a few years, and although there are many organizations working to preserve them, they continue to suffer as their species slowly disappears. In this The Daily Eco video, we're going to see 10 species that are currently at risk of disappearing forever. Number 1. The Mandrel. This curious animal that stands out for their striking colors on their face is in danger of extinction. This is because, unfortunately, their meat is considered a delicacy in the western part of the African continent. In fact, it's part of a trade that smuggles tons of bushmeat into Western Europe. In addition to this, mandrels also suffer from other types of large-scale hunting and from the agricultural industry that cuts down the trees where they live, limiting their habitat. Number 2. The Lemur. The lemur's habitat is in the historic forest of Madagascar, of which unfortunately only 10% remains. Additionally, lemurs give birth to large litters, something that helps them thrive in captivity. However, as they have been bred from a very small genetic pool, reintroducing them to their habitat is very difficult. If we really want to conserve this animal, we must let them live in peace in the jungle. Number 3. The Anganoka Turtle. Known for its unusual shape, this turtle was believed to have already become extinct. But in 1984, it was discovered that some specimens still existed in northwestern Madagascar. At that time, a captive breeding program was created, and later its habitat was named a national park to protect them. However, its rediscovery also made sellers of exotic species take an interest in them. Today, poaching has intensified, and other factors such as fires, deforestation, and agriculture has put it at risk of disappearing. Number 4. The dolphin. Many species of dolphins, both oceanic and river, are in danger of extinction. On the one hand, oceanic dolphins get caught in gill nets, something that can lead to the loss of their limbs and even to their death. In addition, the pollution of the oceans and overfishing means that less and less food is available for them. On the other hand, river dolphins are affected by the construction of dams, something that has contaminated the rivers in such a way that their recovery is highly unlikely. Number 5. The common chimpanzee. These curious primates bear many similarities to our own species, and they live in the West Central Africa. They are at risk of disappearing because they are hunted for humans to consume and because they are transported as contraband to other countries. In addition, they are also affected by logging, agriculture, oil extraction, mining, and by the roads built through their forests, something that fragments their communities. Before we continue, let's put you to the test. How many species do you think have become extinct in the last decade? A. 254, B. 385, or C. 467? Think about it, because at the end of the video, we'll tell you which answer is correct and you'll be able to check if you were correct. The panda bear. This striking exotic animal is seriously threatened. The main cause of their situation is the destruction of bamboo on the planet, which is their main source of food. However, for some time, they have managed to increase their population, and the official list now categorizes them in a state of vulnerability. So it seems that little by little, they are recovering. Number 7. The monarch butterfly. The monarch butterfly is in critical danger of extinction. On the one hand, this is caused by climate change as it modifies their migratory patterns. But in addition, their habitat is being seriously affected as well. This is because the forests which monarch butterflies live are under anthropic pressure from intensive tourist visits, illegal logging, certain agricultural activities, and the excessive use of herbicides on farmland. Number 8. The snow leopard. Poaching is the main reason why this species of leopard is at risk of extinction. It is hunted mainly for its skin, as a trophy to be stuffed, as a pet in private and illegal zoos, and even for their bones. It is also losing its habitat and is affected by climate change. As the planet's temperature increases, the snow melts in their areas and complicates their survival, as they are not prepared to withstand warmer temperatures. Number 9. The brown bear. Deforestation and the destruction of the habitat of this species is the main reason for their vulnerability. But not only that, the construction of roads prevents the population of grizzly bears from interacting with one another. In addition, even today, there are some areas of the planet where hunting continues to be a real threat to the populations of this animal. Lastly, because their reproductive period is very slow, it's very difficult to increase their population quickly, making them one of the most endangered animals on our planet. Number 10. The vulture. This animal protects mammals that are in danger of extinction. This is because when an animal dies, it is automatically marked by a circle of vultures. Thanks to this, guards are alerted whenever poachers go after an animal. Unfortunately, these hunters are retaliating by spraying their prey with cyanide, killing dozens or even hundreds of vultures. And going back to the question we have asked you before, have you thought about it? The correct answer is C. According to the International Union for Nature, 467 species have been reported extinct in the last decade. Leave us a comment below about how you think we can help these species. Thanks for watching this The Daily Eco video, and we'll see you in the next one.
Wasn't that cute? I wanted to do something just like that, and I didn't have time. I wanted to make a video, and guess what? It's for school kids, and they're a very tiny little educational channel, and I have it linked, but cute little videos, and I usually end up writing to these people after I do it. Say, hey, listen, let me tell you what I did because I found it. So it was cute. I think we need a little break from, it's telling us what's going extinct, and we look at those and we feel so terrible, but we can't do anything. What can we do?
Distressing.
We can send money to organizations that are on the ground in Africa or even our country, but I don't know how to say what we can do to stop this extinction. We are in the sixth mass extinction, and as much as I want to say, oh, it's not real. It's not happening. It's not happening. Just like the deniers do. I can't say it. So we are here together. We're going to learn it. And we have an article from phys.org. And this one is on, I'm going to bring it up. You want to tag team this, Jen? Let's tag team it.
Sure.
All right. Let me get us up here. And, you start out, and I'll get us going.
All right. So this is an article that just came out recently in phys.org. It's a study. Climate-only models likely underestimate species extinction. Climate-only models likely underestimate species extinction. It's kind of a weird title. Ecologists estimate that. Sorry?
Climate only. So only modeling climate, right?
Oh, okay. Got it. Thank you. Ecologists estimate that 15 to 37% of plant and animal species will go extinct as a direct result of the rapidly changing climate. But new University of Arizona-led research published in the journal Ecology Letters show that current models don't account for the complexities of ecosystems as they are impacted by climate change. As a result, these extinction rates are likely underestimated. As the climate continues to rapidly change, the areas in which researchers wondered what factors beyond climate must be considered when trying to determine species abundance, distribution, and risk of extinction. This is a central question in ecology, and it has become even more important with climate change, says study author Mark Evans, assistant professor of dendrochronology in the University of Arizona Laboratory of Tree Ring Research. You want to take it away?
Yeah, I'll take it away. Evans and her collaborators, they used data from over 23,000 Pinyon Pines in the southwestern United States to model how climate affects the pine species. While climate affects the trees directly via temperature and precipitation, it also impacts them indirectly through its influence on insects and fire, the researchers found. So those indirect effects can cause rapid shifts in the tree's population and distribution on the landscape. The researchers say this nuance cannot be captured using climate-only models, which base their estimates on direct climate impacts. If we want to make predictions, we have to know what causes species to be in the area in the first place, said the lead study author Emily Schultz, who was a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Arizona when this research was conducted and now is a postdoc, yay, good for her, researcher at the University of Nevada, Reno. We're looking at climate and competition with other species as two possible explanations. What we found is that both factors have some importance to where we find species, but climate seemed to be more important. Anyone can observe the direct effects of climate on plant species by driving up the Santa Catalina Mountains north of Tucson, where the Pinyon, have I said it right? Pinyon pines grow? Somebody will tell me in the chat. Evan
is.
said, as you ascend, the landscape cools and the ecosystem changes from desert to shrubland to pine forests. As the climate in the southwestern United States warms and dries, species retreat to areas with cooler temperatures farther up the mountain. At the very top, some species have nowhere left to go. The more complex indirect effects of climate on species distribution are likely to cause sudden changes in abundance and distribution that are not predictable from a climate-only perspective, Evans said. So climate change is having cascading effects on ecosystems. Climate stress makes individuals physiologically weak and more susceptible to to disease, Evans said. So understanding species distribution is much more complicated than the climate models alone will capture, because they don't capture that level of complexity. The predictions from climate-only models represent the end point you would expect if nothing complicated happened. But that's not the real world. Me, you?
The researchers chose to look at pinyon pines because the species has undergone dramatic population changes in recent decades due to drought and subsequent insect outbreaks. In the early 2000s, there was a strong regional drought, Schultz said. Those unhappy conditions stressed the trees and made them more vulnerable to attack by their natural enemy, the bark beetle. Climate also indirectly affects pinyons in other ways. Wet conditions alone can have a direct and positive impact on pinyons, but such conditions can also have indirect negative effects. More rain means more vegetation, which can bring fuel for wildfires. Pinyon pines are not at all resistant to fires. We want to next include fire in our models. Evans said she had her aha moment when she was talking over lunch with a friend on campus. He told me about a paper of his about extinction of the Monte Verde golden toad, she recalled. Was it climate, or was it the invasive cicrid fungus that caused frogs worldwide to go through massive die-offs? The bottom line for the Monte Verde golden toad was that it was an interaction between the two. The extreme drought year they had then reduced the size and number of the pool of frogs, the pool the frogs were found in. Because they were crowded in smaller pools, they transmitted the fungus more rapidly. Evans said the scenario made her realize how climate and other factors could interact to cause a sudden decline in extinction. Similar patterns of climate-driven stress, disease, and mass mortality events are popping up in species around the world. For example, a disease known as sea star wasting syndrome struck sea star populations in 2013 and 14.
Remember that?
Sword fern plants died off in droves in 2013, and saiga, a kind of antelope, were decimated in 2015. Evans and her collaborators say similar patterns will continue as species struggle to cope with rapidly changing world. They say an increase in uncharacteristic weather events, which they refer to as global weirding of Earth's climate system, will be accompanied by a weirding of Earth's ecology.
Wow. That was pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
That was good. And then we segue. We have, I know we've been an hour, so we're probably not going to be able to cover everything. But this last one was AP. So it was another article that was showing the regular folk, people that are just getting up and looking at the internet and getting something in their Google Mail, and they're going to see that the U.S. says the ivory-billed woodpecker and 22 other species are extinct. And look at him. I'm not going to go into the whole article. It will be there. But what these last two really meant for me, showing that, these mussels, the fauna and flora, there's a whole lot of things here, from Florida to Guam, southeastern United States, Hawaii. It segues into the last piece, which was the Center for Biological Research. And that's the one that has right now the information saying in October, which isn't that long ago, that the administration dropped the ball on federal protections for more than 60 species facing extinction. And we didn't we all have our hopes and dreams that everything would be perfect and everybody would do the right thing, and it's not happening right away or fast enough. So they failed to make this required protection decisions for 66 imperiled species in fiscal year 2021, violating promises in a work plan developed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. It was in 2016 and was intended to address a backlog of hundreds of species awaiting protection, including the Hermes copper butterfly, Florida bonneted bat, and the Rio Grande cooter turtle, and 63 more, right? So this didn't happen. And they blew a deadline for 66 that were due in fiscal year 2021. How does that happen? Is it that maybe I'll just keep reading. Each agency creates a workload, scheduling additional findings that need to be made, and including the final listings and designation of critical habitat. The 66 species were part of the annual workload and the 2016 work plan, which was updated in May of 2021, but the findings for these species were not made as scheduled. So they failed to make dozens of findings from the work plan every year. Well, these are the years that Trump was president. Do you think maybe, Jennifer, that had something to do with this whole mess? But
I don't know.
I don't know. They're mad. Center for Biological Diversity is a little mad. Earlier this week, Biden administration took an important step in the right direction. Okay, and they announced that it will rescind 2 of Trump's bullshit, ridiculous, crappy, idiotic stuff. Yay! The one that severely limited the government's ability to protect habitat that imperiled animals and plants need to survive and recover. And the second opened up the exclusion of habitat for protection based on trumped up economic claims. Yeah, bullshit economic claims. Yep. I haven't found my toilet flush today yet, Jennifer.
Oh,
do you think we're going to find it in this article? Well, it was great news because in the beginning I might have played it, but it was great news that the Biden administration rescinded the terrible Trump critical habitat rules, but the services program for listing species is broken, said Greenwald. We hope the administration will also breathe new life into the agency. There's no excuse for letting them go extinct. Now, the thing is letting them. How can we keep them from going extinct unless we do we have a time machine of 50 years or 100 years? So I'm not going to go into everyone. I'm just going to name them. The Hermes copper butterfly, the Florida bonneted bat, the Rio Grande cooter, the Louisiana pine snake, and the sickle darter. And these are all very important species to the ecosystems. And every time we lose one, Jennifer, we lose a big something, even though they might be just an annoying little whatever to somebody else. But the species name goes on, the 63 species go here in this article. If you're interested, it will be in the notes. It's the Center for Biological Diversity. And there's a lot of them. There's a lot of in all these states. I mean, we're dealing with North America. Obviously, we're dealing with, the United States, our country. So this said, this is the 12-month finding. That was the key to that. And, look at that. That's the Hermes copper butterfly.
It's
It
beautiful,
is
Sandy.
beautiful, Jennifer.
Oh.
It's beautiful. I can't believe,
And you know
Jennifer,
what?
I don't have a
Extinction is
flush.
forever. Once he goes, there's no more,
No
and there's
more.
no getting them. Well,
No more.
there's almost no way of getting them back, although they're thinking
There's a bunch
so.
of beautiful animals in the savannah. Look at them. Beautiful animals. Oh, the beautiful animals, Jennifer. Well, I'm playing. I'm going to put us back up together in the larger size. We pretty much covered everything we wanted to cover, and I didn't get a flush of the day in. I can't believe it was
Well,
something had to suck that I just forgot. How about
huh.
we look at okay, I'll tell you what. Let's do a quick flush because everybody always wants to hear the quick flush. And this will be we are not happy. We don't want extinctions to happen. So we want to flush away our sadness. All right. We're flushing away the sadness for tonight. We didn't flush one issue, we flushed them all. There you go. So, guys, go to the Center for Biological Diversity if you want more information because they're really invested in all of these beautiful things like that beautiful butterfly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so here we are. Let me pull up the chat before we say goodbye. It was a pretty busy show. Um, Thank you, everyone. Jennifer, would you like to take up the rear here?
Well, I just really feel that there is a dawning, you know. I'm thinking of something. There's a dawning of awareness
Mm-hmm.
in humanity at large, and it's starting to creep into the old gray matter that all is not well and that there may be overshoot and that climate change is here and that abrupt weather disasters are one of the consequences. So I think that that awareness is really starting to creep in. And it's, I would say it's a maturation of the human spirit at large, Um, it's a bitch to be right, but none of this surprises me on any level because we saw this coming for years, and now other people are starting to notice it too. So it's a time of waking up and reckoning. Happy holidays.
It just started snowing, and I thought I'd better
Oh,
put up
wonderful.
our street. Yeah, we're the only ones. People get mad at us. We laugh at doom. We laugh at, but
Oh.
we're not.
Well,
We're
we can laugh or
crying.
we can cry.
Well, I cry.
It doesn't matter if you laugh or cry. I mean,
I
you're
know.
going to go through a million different reactions. This is not a religious issue,
I've been having the
you know.
very creepy feeling at night. I feel almost like that. You know how I like that Thelma and Louise graphic I made that I made it into it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
lately I have been feeling like that going off the cliff. I think it started with the tornadoes, and I haven't
Uh,
been able to really shake it yet, Jennifer. And but it is what it is. But let me do a couple of little housekeeping things. I am not going anywhere for Christmas. I'm staying home and I'm going to have a live show. I don't know what time yet. For anybody that would like to join me, I'm going to make it so that you feel that it's comfortable depending on what people have to do or not do. And I thought I would do that. It's like, I wish it could be a soup kitchen, but I can't hand out virtual soup or turkey or any of that. And we have mostly vegans anyway. So anyone who wants to join. And then Monday night, I have Stacey Lee Sherwood. We will be doing a show on the endangered wolves and the manatees. That's Monday night. Okay, so we also are looking to do a state of the planet. Further, that's getting everybody together. So we will let you know. Okay? All right, Jen, take it away.
all right, Sandy. All right. Well, here we are. I think I pretty much summed it up, but
You do a good
hope
job.
everybody has a happy holiday season
Yeah.
and just keep watching what's going on because it's changing fast.
Changes. All right. We are gonna go. Peace out, guys. We love you. And here we go.